Hola, informe. Hoy nos toca con Bender. Es. Mira, Espérate, te la voy a leer bien porque de verdad. Es la Master Run de DS3, con los bosses, por supuesto, ya que te pones. ¿Cómo no? Tiene. Los randomizers del Den Ring. Bueno, que nos cuenten. Bender, how are you?
I'm doing all right, thanks. How are you?
Good and good. Uh, I was wondering. Because I've seen. Well, first of all, congratulations on the master run of DS3. That's awesome. I didn't know you had that.
Yeah, thank you. It's weird that it's been a full year since that happened already. It's a big run.
Yeah. Watching it back, is it as hard as, for example, can think it is? Because it seems like impossible, absolutely impossible to do something like that.
I think it's funny because when Gino did that run the first time, he had a very similar experience. He got the run offline, and then he watched it back and did commentary. And I remember watching that commentary, and he said at one point, I don't know exactly how he said it, but basically any runner could do that run.
Hmm.
And I do think that that's kind of true. It really just comes down to, do you want to put in the time and commitment to that kind of a run? Because there's plenty of different kinds of runs that you can do, but low damage runs are just, a little bit different than other runs. But
Hmm.
anybody can do that if they really want to and if they put in the time and effort. And I feel the same way about it. Um, a lot of times when I'm doing runs, I don't feel like I'm doing anything particularly special. I'm just doing what I normally do. But I chose to focus on low damage runs. I like being in boss fights for a long time, and uh, a run like that, the routing is kind of nice because it requires you to get some interesting stuff. But fundamentally, it's just another no hit run. And I do think anyone out there could do it. That being said, the grind for that run is really tough.
I
It's
imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, resets are very rough. When it's about 5 hours long or more, depending on how you do it. And when I get 4.5 hours in and I lose a run, that hurts. That really hurts. I think that's one of the more annoying things about the run is just how long it is, how long it takes to get things moving, and the resets can be rough. That's really the only problem with that kind of run. Other than that, anyone could do it, really. But it is mentally very tough to work on a run like that. There are a couple of people who are working on that run right now, and I've seen them say the same thing, that it can be very annoying, especially when it comes to resets and stuff like that. Other than that, it's just another run. It is a bit of a more difficult one, but with enough time and practice, anybody could do it, I think.
How long have you been doing no hit runs?
Coming up on 4 years. It's funny. The first no hit run I ever did was in Dark Souls Remastered, and then I pretty much never touched that game ever again. And then I became a Dark Souls 3 nerd, and I went back and forth between Dark Souls 3 and Elden Ring for a while. So I think April of 2021 was my first run. So almost 4 years now.
So I imagine 4 years ago, if you told someone that Master Run was achievable, like, or even was it even remotely possible?
Um, well, I mean, at that time, no one had done that run, right? So the very thought of doing a run like that, at that time was just things were just different. Uh, but it's good to realize that we as players get better and better at this over time. Strats get better and better. Our understanding is more accurate, more complete over time. So things that seemed impossible a little while ago, just over time with enough commitment and energy or whatever, all of a sudden things become possible. And there's new discoveries that happen, not all the time, not super frequently, but they still happen. We still discover new things about these games
Yeah, runs
that
get easier with time. Yeah.
yeah. So, and that is one other thing, is that as far as I know, 6 people have completed a master run of some kind, and it's now in different games. You have Dark Souls 3, Elden Ring, any percent, Dark Souls 1, any
Mm-hmm.
percent. I think it was Kanon did
Keen
that.
on, yeah.
Kanon. And in Sekiro, that was Victor has done that. So, it might seem really difficult in a game like Dark Souls 2 because of just how that game is, but over time that could become possible too. You never know. But yeah, back in the day, like when I started, the first thing I did for Dark Souls 1, I just copied Hobbs' routes when he got Dark Souls Remastered any percent in 2018. I had no idea what I was doing. I just copied somebody else's route,
Yeah.
and you know, it's fine to do that, but like over time, it is good to gain a better understanding of the game and do things your own way. And I'm glad I do that nowadays. But back at that time, there's no like I would never have believed it. No, of course not.
From that statement, can we say at some point we can do a trilogy master run? Just imagine
Oh
something
my
crazy.
gosh.
Just some because it was
Well, I mean, it
Control
is
1 was impossible
conceivable.
at some time. So
Right, right. It is conceivable. So, Shilky completed SL1, no upgrades, any percent trilogy. He did it in
mhm.
Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3. So, if somebody can do that, yeah, it is conceivable that it would be possible to do a master run trilogy. But Dark Souls 2 is still a big challenge on New Game Plus 7. There's a lot about that game that is going to be very, very difficult. But I mean, it's been done in Dark Souls 1. It sounds like there's a lot of RNG to get that run to
Yeah,
work.
yeah, for sure.
Um, Dark Souls 3 can be done, but it's very difficult. And there's also this, you can imagine things that are technically possible, but is it realistic? That's a tough question to answer. And that's what's constantly changing over time is what becomes realistic. So, yeah, everybody watch it. Go for it. Just go for it. Surely somebody will get it in like no time, right?
This month or next month, surely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
surely. Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, it would be amazing to see it, but that is very, very difficult. And especially getting 3 games in a row, doing runs that are that difficult, it just becomes exponentially more difficult when you keep on increasing the difficulty. All of a sudden you're increasing the difficulty for 3 games, and the pressure of doing all of that, 3 games in a row, that's huge. That would be amazing to see.
Now, was that master run your? Because I imagine that's the hardest no hit you have done.
Yeah, objectively, it is the most difficult run. Mostly just because the boss fights are very, very long,
Yeah.
and like it just becomes about surviving long enough to get through the run. And that's where you need to know all of the weird jank and all of the goofy memes that can happen in the game. That's where really long runs stand out. But I will mention the other run that really stands out in terms of difficulty for me was I actually completed this run like 3 days before Master Run. It was in Dark Souls 3. It was level 1, all bosses no hit with the mimic head.
Yeah, I
So I
saw
had the
that.
symbol
That's
of
amazing.
avarice.
That's crazy.
That run is like really stressful because you're constantly losing health, and every running section, every boss fight, you're constantly having to manage your health bar. You have to make sure that you've got your heals ready. You have to find a good opportunity in the middle of a boss fight to heal and all this stuff. And because you're level 1, you can't really increase your health all that much. That's a really stressful run. That was very tough. And I remember I got that run on January 1st last year. The next day, I started doing Master Run D Rust. And like an hour in, I said, man, this is way more chill than the Mimic Head run because the running sections, you can just go at your own pace and not worry about things. But the Mimic Head run, it's so stressful.
Yeah, at
So
least on master run you can go pee. And
yeah, yeah, right. It's just a different kind of difficulty. But that was a really fun run to work on as well, just because it was so challenging and because nobody else had done it. There was a lot to figure out, which is always fun. So
Mm.
I'll mention that run as well. That was also very difficult, but objectively, yeah, the master run is the most difficult one I've done.
Do you enjoy more creative runs? Because I've seen you playing a lot of randomizers. I don't know. I could never get into randomizers.
Yeah,
too frustrating for me. But
gotcha.
yeah,
hmm
what is it that makes it enjoyable for you?
so I really like the randomizers because you end up using different weapons, different like a different build than you're normally used to on no hit runs.
Mm.
You have to make do with what's available, and that is just its own kind of challenge. And obviously not everybody's going to enjoy that, but I do like that kind of challenge because you have to adapt to what you have. That's just it. Um, but I really enjoy the randomizer because it's different every time. It's still Dark Souls or Elden Ring or whatever game you're playing, but it's a different experience every time. And having to adapt is a difficult skill, but it's very rewarding when you're able to do that. And it's very challenging and fun. There's also some very interesting, unique encounters in the randomizer that you'll never have in the vanilla
Yeah,
game.
of
This
course.
bizarre enemy in this location makes things really hectic and chaotic and whatever. Uh, and that's just fun to deal with. It can be very frustrating for sure, but you have to get a little creative. Actually, I will also mention in terms of like difficult runs, um, I did I did a deathless run in Dark Souls 3 in the item enemy randomizer, but it was level 1, and that was actually one of the most challenging runs that I've ever completed. It's not no hit, but deathless at level 1 in the randomizer is quite
Yeah.
tough. It really forced me to like utilize everything that I knew about the game, use all the tools available, know how to do the boss fights well, know where items are, in the game and stuff like that. That was a very fun run to work on, but also very frustrating because I lost multiple runs very far in, mostly because of Aldrich. Aldrich is horrible in the randomizer. You get Aldrich in a large arena, and he warps away on phase transition, and he's way on the other side of the arena. He does arrows, and it's just game over.
Yeah, I
Stuff
got it.
like that. But that was a very fun challenge to work on. I'm a big fan of randomizers, just because, like I was saying, it's different every time, and I like trying, different weapons, different builds, and just adapting to what I have. So that's what makes that really fun for me.
I see, I see. Yeah, I get it. I don't know. It was too much RNG. I mean, obviously, for me, it was
Yeah.
too much involved, you know.
Yeah, you did mention something about like creative runs, and I
Yes,
think
yes.
there's one or two more runs that are worth mentioning. When I got into Dark Souls 3, like I said, I kind of became a Dark Souls 3 nerd, but mostly what I did was I just kept on adding more difficult restrictions. I started with a typical any percent, and then level 1 any percent, all bosses, and then uh level 1 no upgrades, any percent, and then all bosses. I just kept on making the runs more difficult. But then the first run that I did that was sort of creative and unique was no bonfire any percent in Dark Souls 3, which is a very fun run. And it's goofy because when you think like no bonfire, okay, first of all, you have to use bonfires basically at the very beginning and very end. There's no other way to do it. But other
Mm-hmm.
than that, you don't use a bonfire anywhere. And that's a very fun challenge. And it requires some unique routing to make it work. And it is a bit of a low damage run. You're very similar to level 1 no upgrades in terms of damage, but the real challenge is, you only get to go to Firelink once right at the beginning, so you have that one chance to level up, purchase stuff from merchants, get your weapons and stuff, and then everything else you have to pick up along the way, and that's where it really challenges you. How well do you know the game? How creative can you get and make it work? And it's also very challenging in certain running sections because there are times where you have to run through a section and then run back later, and that changes. Like the area is different on a second time, running through there, and so it really forces you to try some new stuff to get through the second time, especially. It's a really fun run, and like very few people have done that run, but that's a really fun one. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah,
Um,
is it fun because of the routing part or because of the, you know?
a little bit of both. Like I like low damage runs because they are challenging. I like staying in boss fights for a little bit longer,
Hmm.
because I really do enjoy the boss fights in Dark Souls 3. It's one aspect of the game that I really enjoy. So, there are a lot of good boss fights, and having to be in those fights for a little bit longer, I won't complain. Um, but the routing was really challenging and rewarding because, like, in order to figure out the running sections, you have to get creative with like using your practice tools, making your save files in a good spot, using your practice tools effectively to like the best example is the cathedral running section between Crystal Sage and Deacons of the Deep.
Beacons, yeah.
You have to run through there and then run back. And when you run back the second time, all of the enemies are in different spots because you aggroed them the first time you ran through, and they don't reset. You don't get far enough away that the game resets them. So they're all in like different spots, and you have to figure out how to make that work. That's a really challenging running section. So in order to practice it, you would need to practice running through the first time and then running back the second time. And you have to figure out how to use practice tools to make that efficient and not waste like 20 minutes going through and doing everything in Cathedral, killing deacons, and then doubling back just to practice a running section once.
Yeah.
Um, so that's where like that was a very challenging run to work on, but you have to get creative, and it was very fun to get. It was a very fun run. I really liked that one a lot. There's one more run that really stood out for me, and it was level 1, all bosses no hit weapon relay. So 25 bosses in the game, and I used 25 different weapons, one weapon for each boss fight. And that was another run that was very challenging to route because you have a lot of weapons available at level 1, and figuring out which weapon for which boss fight and how to route that in takes a lot of time and effort. But that was a very fun run because I got to use so many different weapons, and we found some, uh, I don't know, minor improvements to some things, like my Half-Light fight. Um, a lot of times on level 1, you'll use an upgraded dagger with a fire infusion, but the damage is a little funny, and you have to do some funny stuff in the middle of the fight to make it work. Anyway, uh, it turns out that if you use the Mail Breaker, which is just another dagger, and you give it a fire infusion and fully upgraded, the damage is perfect for that fight. There's no funny business. There's nothing goofy you have to do in the middle of the fight. But nobody would have ever found that except for a run like this where we had to try different stuff and see what worked, and it just worked out perfectly. So that was a really fun run to work on. Um, and anybody could go do that run fundamentally completely different from what I did because there are a ton of weapons available at level 1, and they're actually quite good. So somebody could go and do that run and completely do it differently than what I did, which would be really neat to see.
That's really interesting.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think those are like the more creative and fun runs that I did, and those are some of the most enjoyable ones that I've ever worked on for sure.
That's yeah. We don't really get to see that routing part because it usually happens offline, trying new
Right.
things. But
Yeah.
that's really interesting, actually. It's like playing a
hmm
new game again. It's fun.
Yeah, it's just something very different, there's nothing wrong with, just doing any percent or an all bosses or doing level 1, but a lot of those things are already figured out. They're already pretty well understood. So it's really nice to find something a little bit different to work on and to make it your own. And there's nothing wrong with either one, but I do know over time I do like to try and find something a little different that hasn't been done before and work on that. That's very enjoyable for me.
Mm. Now, Bender, ¿hablas
Yes.
español?
No, not really. I know a little bit from ages ago when I was in college, but I learned very little, and it's been a long time, so no, I do not speak Spanish.
That's fine. I just really like to ask that question.
Yeah.
Do you think? Well, I actually, yeah. W Just tell me a no-hitter or a player of the Elden Ring randomizer that you really admire. Because I usually ask for no-hitters, but I guess you know people that doesn't necessarily do no-hit that are amazing as well.
You're asking for somebody who does like randomizer runs that
Yeah, just
I
big
okay.
challenges. You know.
Um Well, that's a good one actually. There are a few people who have done some pretty impressive runs with the randomizers. Let me think. So probably everybody here knows Gino. Gino
Yeah.
did in Elden Ring. He did level one deathless all bosses, which is really impressive. That is a very challenging run in Elden Ring in the randomizers. So that was all base game bosses, and at level one deathless, that that's a really big challenge because it really does test your knowledge of what do you have available at level one, and making do with the minimum that you have and stuff like that. So that RL1 all bosses run definitely stands out a lot. That was very impressive. Um, in Dark Souls 3, well, a lot of people don't know Nunse. Nunse is a runner who has done
Yeah, I think
a
so.
ridiculous amount of runs in Dark Souls 3. And if anybody doesn't know, he's done all weapons no hit in Dark Souls 3. Every single weapon, he's done a no hit run with them. Like he's done more no hit runs than anyone in Dark Souls 3. But for quite a while, he was working on item enemy randomizer no hit, which has never been done in Dark Souls 3. And he made a lot of progress on that, but the randomizer is brutal in Dark Souls 3, and that is a very, very difficult run. But it was very impressive to see him work on that and to just show off all the knowledge that he has about that game. And still, one of the best runners there's ever been, one of the most skilled runners out there, and it's still just a run that hasn't been completed yet. That
Ooh.
is kind of astounding. So that definitely stands out to me. Um, there's a lot of people who have done a lot of cool stuff in the randomizers. Leo Vernard, he's a French runner. People may know him for a lot of his speed runs, but he's been doing a lot of randomizer stuff recently too. And let's see, Azaz has also done a lot of randomizer stuff. Zoodle is currently hosting a bounty for all bosses, deathless, and the randomizer with some other stuff. But Azaz basically already completed the challenge on his first try, all 207 bosses deathless.
Uh-huh.
And Azaz is a very impressive runner. Been uh, he's been very active in terms of like finding glitches and skips. I think that he put a lot of time and effort into that, but he's a very good runner as well, and he really knows the game inside and out very well. He's been very impressive. He was my teammate in Randomania a few months ago, which Zoodle hosted, and he's a very good runner, very knowledgeable, and he somehow has a knack for finding new things in the game that people have never discovered. So he's a very impressive runner too. Yeah. So those are some of the and there's plenty more out there. Those are just a handful of the many runners out there who do really impressive stuff with the randomizer or with no hit runs, a combination of them. And yeah, it's good to see more people get involved in them. So I hope to see more people do that over time.
Mm-hmm. Last question. Do you have any advice for the new runners?
Um, as lo as long as you're having fun, like keep on doing. If you're interested in getting into it, just make sure that you're having fun with it. I've seen a lot of people, burn out over time because they put so much time and energy into it, but they don't give themselves a break. They don't step back a little bit and, make sure that they're taking care of themselves and things like that. So just make sure that you're having fun with it. Um, the Team Hitless Discord is a great place to start. There's a lot of good knowledge out there and a lot of very helpful people. And um, definitely, I would definitely suggest use all of the tools available to you. Anything that is available, save organizer, practice tool, cheat engine, guides and tutorials, whatever makes sense to you. Use as much of it as you want. Um, but at the same time, it depends where you are. It depends what you're comfortable doing and where you are in your journey and whatnot. But curiosity is a good thing. Like
Mhm.
really getting to learn the game is very, very fun. Actually getting a no-hit run is sort of a milestone in that journey, but we're all here because we enjoy playing these games and we want to continue doing that. So you just want to improve your own knowledge and ability and focus on that. No-hit runs are not, the ultimate goal. They are one part of the journey, but they are very fun. So, I hope you enjoy doing them. But make sure to use all the tools available to you. And there is a big community out there, so make use of it. Ask questions and, look for feedback and just have fun with it. Just try and enjoy it. And if you decide that's not what you're interested in right now, take a break from it and come back when it makes sense. Just enjoy yourself and have fun with it. That's the biggest thing.
That's great. That's great. And that's it. Thank you so much for accepting the interview, Bender. And
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
yeah, it was really nice meeting you. And
Yeah.
good luck on the bounty, on the Shuttle bounty.
All right. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.